everyone will think you're crazy until you've made it. And when you've made it, they'll say you're lucky.
So good.
It's so freaking true, man. You can tell by just talking to someone if they've gone through the shit.
Yeah.
There's some people that I've met and they're in our industry and they have the connections from maybe their dad or their mom. Maybe they own a big business that's very well known within the community and they have immediate clients. They talk differently.
Yeah.
The people that I know that are successful because they just grinded and it popped in 10 years into the business, like those are the people to talk to.
There's like a hardness to a person. Like in your example where the person who might have had that silver spoon type of experience, like they don't know adversity. When life like knocks you on your ass, yeah, there are people who stay there. When it like knocks you on your ass and you get back up and you keep going, that just like builds and builds and builds.
All right, welcome back. This is Sam Maurer Hour. I think it's episode 6, I believe. And I can't blow past the fact that I've got a new guest. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Ben Trushkoff, May Capital Mortgage.
That's right. Your coming out party. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the team. Big things are coming. Before I get into that, because I want to have more of a long conversation, but what was your thoughts on the Joe Biden? Did you watch the State of the Union? I know you're dealing with your rucking event, which we'll definitely have to talk about later.
No, just for people who are listening, quick rundown. What happened?
Joe Biden had a State of the Union address and he spoke about a lot of things, and depending on what your opinions are on him, he seemed to be talking okay. But the one thing that fascinated me, of course, we're in real estate, was he mentioned a portion where he doesn't want to wait till interest rates to go down. So what he is proposing is a $400 tax credit to any new first-time home buyers and any buyers that are buying their second home. So if they're moving up and they need more space. So what that's really communicating is that if you were to average it, it's like effectively like bringing your interest rate, the associated payment by down about 1.5%, give or take. So on face value, I think from a non-economic perspective, it sounds great. It's kind of like the utopian thought of like money's great, but what happened after the stimulus checks?
Bingo.
Yeah. Inflation issues, right? So, I mean, when you hear a $400 tax credit, that's essentially what they're doing is they're trying to give you let's just say your total payment is $2,500, but the US government is giving you a $400, essentially a deposit every month for that and recognizing that you just bought a home. But then they are saying for 2 years. But what I think about, what are your thoughts on that?
Dude, nothing.
I have my opinions.
Nothing is free. So it's like when we were getting stimulus checks and the rate was getting subsidized in the 2s and the 3s.
Right.
It's like that stuff catches up with us. Nothing is free. So I love tax breaks. I think, we should keep more of our money.
Tax breaks are good, but tax credit in the form of money back to you from a government spending perspective, not good.
Yeah, it's got to come from somewhere. And so where that comes from, it's going to be from taxpayers. The rich classically don't pay taxes.
Recycle effect.
Yeah, they get more breaks and more loopholes than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not going to come from the rich. The middle class will benefit because they have access to it, but then they're going to be paying for that. And then people who can't afford a house, it's just going to make it further and harder for them. So
right. Yeah, it's so true, man. And honestly, people don't understand. I think that it's interesting because I think it's tough because I am an economics nerd. And sometimes when you almost sound insensitive when you think that's a negative thing. Well, for one, we have to consider the facts. We're in an election year. So a lot of crazy things are going to be thrown out there. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, right? I mean, anything that can entice you to become a voter for said person who's speaking, the better.
Bingo.
But that nature is just so gross to me. There's no guarantee, but just considering that as a factor, maybe if he said this in the beginning of his term, and this is something that he actually laid out in terms of a proposal, he brought it out. There's an actual bill that's being proposed to Congress, stuff like that, like actually like actionable steps that he's made. and has enough time to do it, that would be different. But I mean, you have until November of this year to even do anything. So what's the realistic version? So I think that trying to run the idea is like, if you like implied, if you vote for me, I'll keep working on this.
Yeah. Dude, the other thing is like, what is the role of the executive branch? Like last I checked,
That's a can of worms.
they're not the ones who make laws. Like it's Congress, it's the House of Representative, it's the legislative branch.
Right.
Like they work on laws, it goes up to the president. And so this thing where like the president has some type of sway in creating laws, like, no. You get to sign them or you get to veto them. And then when the conversation needs to, it goes to the Supreme Court. But for a president to be like, I'm going to pass this, it's like, bro. And what country is this? Like, last I checked, we still got the legislative branch that does that part.
Yeah. Ryan, do you remember how they instituted the stimulus checks? Because I'm pretty sure they got it approved due to emergency. Like for instance, it reminded me, this is not to get too political. I don't think this is political, but this is quite literally factual. Is like with the vaccine originally, it was considered on the label FDA approved due to emergency status.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Which is, if you think about it back, like if you think about it logistically, that's crazy. It's really crazy, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole quite yet.
We're not touching that one.
Not yet. But yeah, it's fascinating because that was a situation where you'd have to, the amount of data that would have to be compiled. I mean, it would be pretty easy to figure out how many people can benefit from it. I mean, most people would be able to benefit from face value, but to your point, it will get recycled back and they're going to have to pay for it over time within their taxes that they're having to pay in general. Anyways, their federal taxes are the highest taxes they have to pay. That's going to get increased over time.
Like the way I get most of my knowledge is through Schoolhouse Rock. So I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for them to take a stance on it. Right. Like, how does a bill become a law?
It's been a while.
Yo, Schoolhouse Rock. If you guys could comment on this,
can you just like simplify it? Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing with how those things came to pass, we just were kind of accepting a lot of stuff as like stuff was in crisis during that
the
era.
COVID time, like 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like
no one had their footing. So people were just slipping all over the place, just trying to find something to grab onto.
Yeah.
You know?
And then what ended up happening, and like, I don't know, I'll have to research this further, but like classically, like we had all this stimulus, we had all the interest rates were like artificially low. That too has to get paid for. What are we doing now? The other thing is like traditionally, classically, like 5% down payment, you get an appreciation or a discount on your rate. You go up to 10%, you get more of a discount. 15, more of a discount. 20, up to however, like 25 or 30%. But then what happened is in 2023, they passed that law to where you're not getting as much of a break for bringing more money to the table.
Yeah, it's like, this is actually a good point. It's so dumb, but it's between 10 and, you put between 10 and 20% down. Until you get to 25% down, you won't be getting a really big reason of improvement on rate, which is it's called the reappropriation of credit, something of that degree. But
dude,
and also your credit scores.
Like in our industry, they use the term, they're punishing people for bringing more money to the table. And I don't like using that term because it's like an inferred or it's implied punishment. But at the end of the day, like you're bringing more money to the table and you're not getting that appreciation to your credit rate or your interest rate. Mm-hmm. And so it's like they're finding all these different ways to like pinch pennies. And then it's coming from where? On the backs of consumers,
right?
On the backs of people who've like worked hard to like get there. And so again, it's like, it's an election year. Will that really come to pass? Like, no, it's sometimes it's politically just like they're talking out of their backside in order for the constituency.
When a politician merely mentions like something that is, so I've noticed that a lot of presidents, what they'll do is they'll try and find what's trending among the young generation, like the Gen Z and the millennials. So the biggest thing is the affordability issues and trying to buy a house. That's part of the American dream. So, but when a politician simply says, I want to do this with no actionable plan laid out, like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to lean on the fact of probably a little bit of hooey. I'll just say it a little bit nicer. But yeah, it's interesting. I figured it was something it was worth bringing up. But at the end of the day, if that were to happen, it would not help with inflation. It would also not help anyone qualify anymore because remember, it wouldn't affect the debt to income ratio that they're at currently unless they were to work with all the banks that are essentially like all of our wholesale lenders that we work with and say, hey, every single new first-time home buyer is identified and you should apply a $400 additional income to their debt to income ratio, which is mortgage payment plus all your monthly debt divided by your gross monthly income. So maybe they have the gross monthly income plus the $400 tax credit, but there's so much that would have to happen that it's just.
Well, I remember doing this assignment in college for a political science class where they go take a piece of legislation, study the crap out of it, study like the original Senate congressional documents. They're very dense. You fall asleep reading this stuff
On purpose.
And I did a basic one. It was Obama's $1,000 income tax credit. And so I'm like, all right, that one's easy.
Yeah.
Everybody should get a tax break on their income. But I think it came in the form of some other like credit. And I was like, easy. Like I want everybody to have more money in their pockets. I want people to be better off. Well, it turned out that bill had like billions of dollars of pork attached to it. And so it's like the other stuff is like how much smoke screen is going on here where like it's hard to be the politician to go, no. I don't want this bill because of all the other garbage attached to it. And so it's like, no, you have to see like, what is the nature of that bill and how is it going to affect like the economy, the average American consumer? But then also it's like, what else is below that bill? Like when you get like a 100-page bill, you get to page 95 and you're like, look at all this junk that was attached to it.
Right.
It's all very sussy, man.
Yeah, it is.
You know who I want to represent us more often in the political space that probably a lot of people wouldn't think? I want Rihanna to.
You want Rihanna?
Yeah, based off of one song, $1.25 if you can guess what song
Diamonds.
That's a good.
Umbrella's a great song.
I want Rihanna to represent the American people based on that one song that goes, "Bitch, better have my money." I'm sick of paying for everything for the government. I'm sick of all these programs, and I just want Rihanna for that one song.
What does it go? Play me for what you want.
Pay me what you owe me. Like definitely not it's an NSFW song. The music video, it's got like, it's NSFW through and through, but that one line.
Fun fact, I didn't realize what NSFW meant until like a year ago. I just thought it was like, okay, it's just like, I'm guessing it just is like, like if something's like rated R, like XXX, it's like really bad. I was just like, oh, it's just a new term. Yeah. And I was like, and someone said not safe for work. And I'm like, oh, okay. It makes perfect sense. There's a lot of NSFW on Reddit. I've come to find out.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, that's all it is.
Oh, yeah.
Reddit's the Wild West of information.
Dude, I don't know. Like Reddit has like a setting that you can like shut that off, blah, blah. And then if you have that, it's like pretty mild. It's fine. But then it's pretty much just a basic.
It's like pretty boring.
Yeah, there's nothing stimulating.
Yeah.
But then when you go flip that switch, that faucet kind of lets everything.
How did we go from passing a bill in the House of Representatives to the Senate getting it passed? But anyways.
Rounding back.
Yeah, rounding back. Yeah, I highly doubt that's going to happen. And if it does, that would be interesting. I think that we can leave on that. So you came from a brokerage before.
Yeah, great brokerage. Just kind of outgrew that. Been in the industry for close to 3 years, and eventually you just go on to the next thing. And then when I started the process to look at like where's the next place I'm going, and started talking and interviewing with companies. When I got into lending, I don't really have a entrepreneurial background. Nobody in my family to really like lean on as far as like, hey, this is a career change I'm making, and so got into lending and just interviewed with a few and got a sense of, okay, this is the path that I'm going down. One of the first conversations I had with my previous company was the difference between like retail and wholesale. Retail, basically their rates are higher.
Give an example of retail.
Man, I don't want to name names, but
well, like for instance,
a
you don't have to name a company.
Okay.
But the first one I would go to would be a bank. That would be retail.
So the difference is retail has a bucket of money that they're borrowing from, and that's the only bucket of money that they pull from. And if you have an opportunity to get a better rate somewhere else, better costs, whatever, they can't send you there. Like Wells Fargo, for example. I can say bad things about Wells Fargo.
Yeah, Wells Fargo's got.
And who left the mortgage game? Wells Fargo.
Yeah.
So retail lenders, they're not going to be like, hey, did you know you can get a better deal by going to...
They're never going to say that.
No, because they're literally sending their business out the door.
Right.
Whereas in wholesale, we shop a bajillion bankers, bajillion investors to find who's got the best rates, best costs, best programs. Mm-hmm. And then we're not committed to that brand. We're committed to the client.
Yeah.
So for me, just like being a convicted person, I want to be able to look, auntie in the face, my close friends, my family, my clients. We have that fiduciary responsibility to them, and to be able to look them in the eye. Yeah. And and just honestly say, no, this is the best rate. We've done everything, we've pounded the file, the loan, every which way to get you the best.
And it's interesting that you mentioned, because I think a lot of people think like the lowest rate, which the rate is a huge factor with payment. But what's interesting too is I think a lot of mortgage brokers fail at this. Is they focus just on rate. There's sometimes, like, for instance, I'll just use a couple examples of just like, let's just name a couple. United Wholesale Mortgage versus Plaza. Like, I love them both, and I work with both.
Great company.
Yeah, they're great. But one may have a little bit higher rate, but their mortgage insurance factor is lower. So it's yielding a lower net payment than, let's just say Plaza has a lower MI than UWM. Their rate's a little bit higher. But people don't realize that mortgage insurance can also be shopped too.
Yeah.
So if you don't understand, so conventional loans, your mortgage insurance, as you know, can fluctuate between your down payment and your credit score. FHA, it's fixed at 0.55% unless you're putting over 5% down, 5% down. And from there, that's where it can really, shopping is huge. Like if you're working with a regular bank, let's just go with Wells Fargo since they're out of the game. They're going to be dealing with their own mortgage insurance companies that they can shop between. So maybe it's 3. Usually the average is 3. Let's say each one of our wholesale lenders has 3 options for mortgage insurance, and we have 100 different wholesale lenders we shop. We have 300 MIs that we can shop.
Yeah.
So people don't also consider that either. And that was something that I've considered a lot, but more recent, I had a recent client that actually was like, their credit score was like right in the mid 700s and the payments were really close to an FHA and conventional. They want to go conventional. There's positives and negatives to both, but I ended up finding that there was a significantly lower mortgage insurance, but the rate was higher, but it ended up yielding a lower payment.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because your mortgage insurance would be like, let's just use the example of, let's say we have an interest rate of 7%, but our mortgage insurance is 0.55. It's like having a 7.55% interest rate, but people don't think about that. Anything below 20% down, you're going to have it. So sorry to cut you off, but I thought that was an interesting factor because we're shopping total payment. which is cool, you know. But what kind of led you to how we operate? Like what enticed you? Because we're old school, but we're very nitty gritty with our details, as you know.
What we offer at our company now, what you guys are offering was expertise in this other facet of lending in the private channel.
Yeah, private money.
Private money is its own beast, and you get borrowers who don't fit the mold for a conventional, an FHA, etc. But they are well-to-do borrowers. Like, they deserve to get a loan, to buy a house. They're financially stable, but because they don't fit the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac motif, that's not the right word there, but because they don't fit that mold, they get turned down. And so that private money channel, I think, was very alluring. And then also your guys' years of experience, the training that comes with being at the brokerage, it fills in a lot of the gaps. I try to be a pretty convicted person, serving my community, my clients. So I loved you guys were local. I love that there's a big presence, being in Rockland, the heart of where we do business. Yeah. So it just tick marked so many of the boxes.
Yeah.
I also like the allure of being on a smaller team with the opportunity to grow. Yeah. Like, you get into one of these
bigger box situations. Yeah.
Yeah. And again,
like a number,
not naming names, but some of these larger companies that have their own kind of levels of promise. We promise this, we promise this, we promise this.
Therefore, they'll increase their payment and costs when they have more people that they have to fit, what they have to pay.
Bingo. It's like we have a beautiful office. It's modest. It's like you go to a big company that's 4 stories tall. It's got glass, this beautiful glass building wrapped up. That's not free. And they're
all just renting it.
They didn't pull money out of their pocket to pay for it it's all overhead. And that cost doesn't come from the employees. That cost doesn't, they're not scraping together money to, let's buy 4 walls and a roof. Nah, it's leased, it's rented, whereas like
factor in their profit and loss.
Bingo. And that gets projected onto mom and pop.
The consumer.
Bingo. And so it's like, I get why they exist. I get how they got there. The other thing that I absolutely can't stand is correspondent lending, where like in our world, we have compensation rules that the government set in place because pre-2008, this was the wild, wild west. Nobody needed licenses. You could be a barista today and be a loan officer tomorrow back then.
Prior to 08.
And no or very minimal regulation. And so now we have rules that say this is the most you can make. And correspondent allows you to bill a bunch of stuff up front and then also get billed on the back end. And then now you get to blow past those rules. And again, I have to look auntie in the eye and go, I did the best by you. I have to look all my clients in the eye.
That's going literally against the idea of being a broker, why you're a broker in the first place.
Bingo.
It really opened my eyes when I talked to like one of the biggest brokers, like in terms of volume. And I spoke with the broker of it. We had a one-on-one and we just chatted and just masterminded just a couple of times. And I don't want to talk about the company name just because it doesn't need to be known. But I asked, I was like, are you guys a correspondent? Knowing I was just kind of testing him to see if he's a correspondent. He's like, absolutely not. I was like, why? And he said, it defeats the purpose of being a broker in the first place.
Bingo.
The ability to give, what does it matter? Lowest payment, lowest cost. What do you care about as a buyer? What's my payment? What's my total cost? And when you're a correspondent, you can totally and utterly shield a lot of those costs. So, and it tempts too many loan officers out there. And there's no need for us to go that route because I think there's also a certain level of volume you need to give to X wholesale lender. So for those that don't understand what a correspondent or a mini correspondent, if you're talking to a broker and they say they're a correspondent, essentially what they're saying is, I'm working with this wholesale lender and I'm packaging up. I have underwriters, I have doctors and funders, and I work off a mini line of their larger line of credit. And essentially all you're doing is you're packaging that loan up and you're sending it to that wholesale lender for them to then resell again. So to me, it's kind of like you're dipping your toes into an area to where you don't need to.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to go the line of credit route, might as well go for broke and become a true lender. But then you're going to be imposed on another whole lump sum of different laws, regulations, amount of overhead, the amount you have to put your whole life on collateral to even get a $50 million warehouse under credit, which is peanuts and compared to some of these wholesale lenders. I would imagine some of them have like $1 billion line of credit, which is crazy to think about. But they always have to repay it back. So there's systems, how many people have to pay. It's a huge deal. But it's crazy to think that how much money can be made by moving money around.
Dude, and it's like,
but that's mortgages.
The more people that are involved, they don't work for free.
No.
And so you have that correspondent channel, you have the yield spread on the back end. And it's like, managing that, figuring that out, then servicing those loans, there's costs all along the way. Mm-hmm. And it's like, everything's already so expensive. And so just to add more cost because you want to make more, it's like, dude, work hard, do an honest living.
Yep.
The rest takes care of itself. And so for me, that was really important. Like being in a family business, I love you guys' family. Immediately I'm like, just jumped into the team, felt welcomed. Yeah. So it was great, man.
I kind of look outside to then look in, and I kind of realize what's interesting about the way we work is that it's very open door. Like you don't have to wonder about like what's going on behind closed doors. You don't worry. Like you never have to worry about what my dad's thinking. He's always going to tell you.
Yeah.
He's not going to try and hide the fact that maybe last month was a slow month and they're communicating like, hey, like it's the communication transparency. And I think a lot of other companies, they try and make it seem like things are good for so long and then doors close.
Yeah.
Like I think that's for some reason, I don't know why lending has been that way, but I think that when egos come into play, but I was just thinking about that the other day, but it's very, very open door. You're not requesting anything from like 3 hours away. You have to contact this weird guy to get paid or whatever. Like you hop into my dad's office, give your commission slip, you're good to go. Yeah. Right. So it's just kind of an interesting, and it kind of gives you that feeling of like you can kind of like move around of you're not just stuck to FHA conventional, USDA and VA, FHA conventional and USDA, like the basics. Of course, we have bank statement, DSCR, the alternatives, and then we have private money, which is a whole different element. I wanted to ask you, and if you don't want to talk on it, it's totally fine, but what is your opinion on cryptocurrency?
Oh, dude.
Because it's been popping off lately. I spoke about it with Gerard last week. Actually the week before and it was right. They think right now Bitcoin's up to 72,000 per coin.
Oh man.
And, I think we're about to hit a new bull market, like a big one. And the last one lasts for like 8 months straight.
Confession time. I know nothing about Bitcoin. It's like people have tried to explain it. Like I had a good buddy who was all about his wallet, explaining the blockchain. And I just sort of glaze over it.
Do you know how I can explain it to you in 10 seconds? Well, no, okay, give me a minute. Bitcoin is, of course, an alternative digital currency, which we're kind of already almost there with the US dollar anyways.
Yeah.
The majority of money is in a phone in form of numbers on a screen. But the thing with Bitcoin is think of it in terms of a public ledger that is posted that everyone can see. So there's no, like in terms of tracking transactions of receipt, etc., it's all automatically put onto that ledger. So essentially it decentralizes the bank and it completely takes that away from them. And you don't need that. So you can be able to be your own bank because it's already automatically doing itself. It's already reporting your transactions for you, if that makes sense. So essentially, it's diverging away from the U.S. dollar, and it's a good way of hedging against the U.S. dollar just in case. So that's why, if you notice, like when I see a lot of people buying cryptocurrency, and especially along with the fact that gold is going out too, that's showing to me that the U.S. dollar confidence among the United States is diminishing slowly and slowly. The more it gains traction, the more it's going to be more adopted. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It just depends on how it will be implemented and how the U.S. government is actually going to play ball or not. Because I mean, there's been talks. Have you heard of the CBDC? So it's called the central bank digital currency.
No.
So the idea with that is to essentially, it's in the talks, and some may say it's conspiracy, but it's clearly, like, you can look up the CBDC. It's already been and also in the process of being developed. But it's a central bank digital currency. But the reason why people don't like it is because it's going to be set directly with the Federal Reserve, not the Federal Reserve, the central bank. It's going to be plugged directly into that. So there's not going to be any transactions that are going to be, the government's going to know every transaction you possibly make, which is not okay. And that's the reason why Bitcoin was created. So people, like, it started on the black market for obvious reasons, but the reason why is that you don't have any outside third parties that want to manipulate or control. It's self-sustaining on its own, and it's becoming its own decentralized exchange. So it's a way to divert away from the public banking system, because it's already broken. Fractionalized banking. If you went to go, I will to bet you, if you had $10,000 sitting in a savings account, let's just say 20 grand, but you wanted to pull 10 grand out and you went to the bank, I guarantee they wouldn't be able to give it to you.
Oh, yeah. That's nonsense, man. There have been instances where I've gone to the bank, I got to buy a car, pay something large. Mm-hmm. And I go, yo, I need this amount. And they're like, can't do it. And I'm like, whoa. I can walk in through the door, give you $20,000. But they cap you at like $3,000, $4,000 for that day. And I'm like, again, this is why I think Rihanna should represent us. You go to the bank, bitch better have my money. And they're like, no. We can give you $4,000. It's like, no, dude, you don't understand. I got this guy. I got to buy this car. Like, they're like, you got to give us a notice. And it's like, no, that's ridiculous. Like,
yeah. I mean, by law, a bank only has to have upwards of 10% of the amount of funds that have been deposited. So like, you have $10,000 by law, that they only have to have $1,000 of your money. The rest they lend.
That's crazy, man.
It's crazy. So if you really, really do think about it, and the reason why people are gravitating towards digital currency, for one, Bitcoin is finite in the amount that is actually in circulation. And also in April, they're going to cut in half the amount of supply. So what do you think that's going to do with demand?
Oh, dude, that's crazy.
Well, in other words, it's going like a lack thereof, or a reduced amount of supply in that asset will obviously create a supply shock, and the opposite, creating more of a scarcity situation, which obviously is going to be in a place to where prices will go up for it. So if there's 20 homes available in Placer County, in this month, but next month there is 2,000 homes available. So we go from 20 to 2,000. Then you're going to see, well, it's going to be more expensive then, but then next month it would be, well, we have a lot more homes. Yeah. So people have time to look, they have time to choose, they have the ability to negotiate. Like, there's another one over there I can go buy too.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't know if that was the best. You understand though. I mean, it comes down to simple supply and demand. The less there is to buy, the more the demand will then bid up the price. It's like with real estate. That's what we know.
Yeah.
If we see there's only 3 homes available in Penryn that went live on Thursday, and that's all they have. And there's 20 buyers ready to go that want to buy a house in Penryn. Those 20 people are looking at 3 properties. You think that property is probably going to go above list price?
Oh yeah. It's bidding more.
Right. So if demand's exceeded supply, what's going to happen? Price go up. Beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I love economics. And that's why I like talking about the Joe Biden thing, because it's just like what he's essentially doing is he's continually, right now we have our money's right here. Our money's right here. Our supply is right here. What we're trying to do and our demand is right here. Cost of goods is interesting. So if there's more in supply, and let's just say in cost of goods, in terms of just regular goods, if there was more to hit the market, what would that do to the price of it?
If there's more of a good in the market, so if there's more microphone manufacturers and producers, then the cost of microphones go down.
It's tough with inflation because it's not, the more money supply we have, that means things are going to be more expensive because the dollar is worth less.
Yeah. Like putting money in the economy, like triggers inflation.
So if he were to institute that tax credit and he put more in, so let's just say 10% of the US population, which is, I believe, like 400 million, something like that.
So, yeah.
So we take 400 million, and we do 10%. So that would be 40 million. And then we were to do 400 times. I don't even have enough zeros.
Just flash out the thing.
Yeah, I don't even have enough zeros. That's crazy. Essentially, it would be a ton of money that would be reintroduced into the market. Tons of money.
Like it's not human nature to like to do hard shit. Like saving, like spending money activates a dopamine response in your brain. Like people like shop therapy and impulse spending is a real thing.
Right.
And so to fight against that natural response, it's not fun. And so exercise ain't fun. Like a good diet's not fun. Like sugar tastes better than vegetables.
Way better.
And so it's just our nature to like want the path of least resistance. Like our bodies, our psyche, like they have this survivalist instinct
economics is weird when you're talking in a macro, but you have to look at the micro first, and it comes down to, what started this whole inflation thing in the first place? It started with, of course, it was interesting because for a while there, everything pretty much got. Trying to remember what happened in March. The first thing that happened was the stock market crashed because the market hates uncertainty. And from there, to create certainty and reintroduce more money into the market to stimulate the economy, the Fed decided to lower the Fed rate to 0 for the first time in history. From there, more and more money. So it started like this. People were like, oh, I can buy a house for 2.5% interest rate. So my payment's only going to be $1,500 for X amount of home. Wow. So I can start there. But then you have a bunch of baby boomers that have already owned homes. And what are they doing? They're refinancing, pulling money out. So they're taking cash out with interest rates below 3%, which the average rate of inflation, which is the goal, the average rate of inflation is 2%. And that is like a really good year. You're curbing inflation within a year and a half after you pulled that cash out refinance. So why wouldn't you do that? I would pull as much money out as I possibly could. So what did that do? So more money just flooded the market. And then guess what happened again? Stimulus checks. How many rounds of stimulus checks did we get? It was like 2 or 3 or 4. I can't even remember. So we had all this new spending on the car loan side of things. People were buying cars now. People were now buying homes. People are pulling cash out of their homes. The amount of cash out refinances that were going on was insane. And guess where that money goes? It goes into that restaurant. It goes into more Christmas presents for the kids, which is goes to all these different companies. So it spreads out, stimulus checks. Oh, I have more money to put back in the stock market. So all this money is like this, but it gets to a certain point of when there's just so much money in circulation, it gets to a certain point to where that money has exceeded the equilibrium of supply. Mm-hmm. So we have $1 used to be worth $1. But 3 years from now, from 2020, 4 years from now, the average dollar, let's take a look actually. Why not? What the heck? So 2020, $1 in 2020 equals $1.19 in 2024. So that begs the question, would you rather have $100 today or would you have $100 from a year from now? Because the value is guaranteed today.
Oh, yeah, 100. Yeah, back in the day, $100 used to buy you something, man.
Because money is a
$100 don't buy you shit.
No, but the point is though, is what $100 can get you today is the value of what that $100 signifies, right? So like for instance, I remember when I got a $20 bill for my birthday. That was awesome. I was like, dang, I can do it. This is something. Like I could buy, I don't know, like 4 or 5 sandwiches with this, something like that. But now it's more so of like, that's like one solid meal,
dude,
at least the way I eat, or maybe 2 meals for the average. But I hope that makes sense. But it's, from 2020 to 2024, $1. So let's do that. So if we're at 1 divided by 1.19, so we've lost 16% of the value of the dollar in 4 years.
Dude, that's nuts, man. What doesn't get talked about enough that I think is like...
So in other words, your dollar goes 16%. You can buy 16% less.
That's insane. That's literally the pizza example. Do you feel like pizzas have gotten smaller over time?
That's another part of inflation.
That's exactly it.
So have you heard of that? What companies do in inflationary times?
No.
So what they'll do, I want you, whoever's watching this, go look at what Doritos, the amount of ounces that was in a Doritos pack in 2015. See how big how much chips were contained in that packaging for regular Doritos. Take a look at that picture, go to the grocery store and compare it to today.
Oh, dude, they're skimming.
So that's what they're do.
Skimming.
But companies will do that so it feels like they're not leaving anything out. They're not providing the same as what they were before.
Yeah.
So if it's the same size, but less in that size, that's how companies curb inflation too. Because when inflation happens, that means labor's more expensive. That means like gasoline's more, energy's more expensive. All of this. So it all gets wrapped up in their total profit and loss. So what do they need to do? They need to figure out a way to essentially give you a little bit less by making the same. Mm-hmm. Therefore, their profit margins are bigger or matches the inflation rate.
Basic principle in accounting, they used to ask us this question. They go, how do you make more money? Well, simple answer, like produce and sell more units. Okay, well, if your production or ability to sell is stagnant, what else can you do? Cut your costs. So if a bag of chips is $5 and used to get 16 ounces in it, now they're going to keep that bag of chips for $5, but they're only going to give you 14 ounces.
Right.
They've reduced theirs, but like they've reduced their cost, but it's stayed the same. So it's like there's 2 ways to give yourself a raise. It's kind of an accounting thing.
Yeah. What sucks is that it got to a point to where they were reducing the amount that is contained in a bag of chips. I use that as an example because you can clearly see I believe it's on the bottom right of the packaging, the total ounces that are in there. But at first they kept it at the same price, and then they slowly raised the price a little bit, and kept the amount of ounces the same. So it's almost like you start there, you keep the price the same, but you reduce the amount of ounces because they're probably not going to notice at first glance.
Oh yeah.
People don't know about it. Well, they don't really actively talk about, I don't know about you, but you're not at the dinner table talking about like, I got 0.75 less ounces in my Doritos pack. I am furious.
Dude, my kids have had to bolt down the table. They were like, Dad, stop trying to flip it.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of smart for companies. They got to make a profit at the end of the day, and they have this finite equation to where it makes sense off the line to, if they need to make a change, then just one less chip could probably yield hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars more in profit.
Oh, dude, there was an airline. I remember hearing this little factoid. They reduced, like, I think it's the number of olives that they would put. You know, not everyone's drinking a drink.
It just depends on how
they
big
reduced
you are.
their olives, like the number of olives they put in their drink, and they curbed their cost by like $19,000 a week by one olive, bro.
That's crazy.
And so yeah, like
but that's something that you have to. If you're in the board of directors room, you're like, hey, like, what products can we just do one less of that nobody really likes, anyways?
Yeah, I really want to get that olive money.
Yeah, that olive money, man. I mean, I would imagine it's kind of smart because olives are a natural vegetable, so it's probably on the more expensive food items that they have.
Yeah.
So that would make sense because it's not like it comes out of a jar, but I would imagine you can't do like one less pack of peanuts. It's like, yeah, aisle 3 F, that guy doesn't get a pack of peanuts. Sorry. Like that's obvious. But the olives thing, that's interesting. But I really, really, really want to be more optimistic on interest rates. But at the end of the day, the CPI report came out and it said that inflation is a little bit higher again. So that's 2 months in a row. But thankfully, interest rates didn't really go up a whole lot. It kind of stayed a little stagnant, which is good. Yeah. So don't see any rate hikes anymore. It kind of indicated that we're at the top of that, because how much more higher in rates do we have to go to cut spending? We're at a point to where there's no one taking cash out of their properties through mortgages. So that's gone. People aren't buying cars. That's gone. Like you're saying, I don't know about you, but have you noticed car dealerships, how like I was looking at a Dodge Charger Scat Pack, a wide body last year, just because I was curious. And I almost made a poor decision and did that, but they're sweet. I love them. Yeah. But I was trying to negotiate with them. I said, I'll give you 60 for it. They're like almost laughed at me because it was 65 MSRP, but they're adding a $10,000 add-on premium because they're saying that Chargers is the last year to make them in 2023. But I told them, I'm like, dude, that doesn't mean there's going to be none to buy on the market. So give me a call when you figure out when you want to negotiate, because I started there so I can negotiate. With cars, and I feel bad, but it is what it is. Like, but I still look at it this day, the same Charger Scat Pack wide body is still on the market. And that's been since I last looked at it. Keep in mind, it was like on the market for 110 days at the time when I was looking at it. And this was back in November. Mm-hmm. I was looking at cars in November, and all those Chargers that I was looking at, they're all still trying to be sold. So we're 4 months past that. So that's another over 100 days again.
Dude.
So cars aren't selling.
Yeah.
I mean, the only cars that are the affordable ones, the ones that give you a lot more gas mileage, more bang for your buck, that will save you money over a long period of time by maintenance, like putting gasoline in your car. But a gas guzzling car like a Dodge Charger Scat Pack with a wide body with, what was it, like 480 horsepower, gas guzzlers tax. No one's buying that in an inflationary time.
Yeah.
So,
dude, what was the gas mileage on that?
I think the best on highway was like 18.
-3.
Yeah. -3. Yeah. Honestly, there's not a lot of cars that are like that bad, because especially if you're in California, you have to have a certain scrubber involved. If anybody's in that sells cars, let me know. There's a certain emission. It's a certain emissions that you have to be able to pass at.
Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons why Hummer had such a bad time.
Oh God.
Yeah. And sometimes that's one of the reasons why sometimes people can't pass smog, because they don't have this certain calibrator. I can't remember what it's called. I'm not.
Yeah. There's like certain emission statuses. Like you're burning a lot of fuel. That burned fuel has to go somewhere. And so California is like, no.
Yeah.
You can't be burning that much fuel in your cars anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't know how I got into that, but I, yeah, we'll see how it goes. But if I were to make a professional opinion on where rates are going to go, I don't think we'll see any rate reductions by the Fed until quarter 4. That's my new estimate. A lot of people are still saying July, but we're in March right now, and our report is showing that inflation's gone up twice in a row.
Yeah.
So we need at least 3 months in a row of inflation going down to indicate that the Fed may reduce the Fed rate.
This year, when we had the first round of reports from Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve, first reports I saw 3 to 6 interest rate cuts this year. I posted about it. 3 to 4 interest rate cuts this year, 3 to 4 in 2025.
Yeah, I'm curious.
It didn't happen.
Right.
But then the rhetoric, then I heard people say 6 to 8. And then I was like, dude, how cheap is crack in your neighborhood? Like people just get so flagrant with their expectations because we're in sales.
Right.
And it's like that's what people say in order to sell. But it's like, that's also not honest. That's not truthful.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's kind of shady leadings,
I will say, and this is advice for people, if they're looking for a professional in the mortgage industry or an agent to work with, the telltale signs if you're working with someone that's solid, I think, is sometimes you say things that are against your best interest of what they are. So like, for instance, what I tell my clients is that at the end of the day, all we can do is work with what we have now and make sure that the budget is good, because people are predicating like, oh, you just need to be able to have this payment good for the next 6 months. And as long as you get past that, you'll be fine. I'm telling them like, nothing's guaranteed other than death and taxes. I would say make sure that you establish a budget for a minimum that you can be able to be in this for 10 years. If you go even further and say the full term, it's pretty unlikely you won't ever touch your mortgage after you buy in this higher rate environment. But 10 years at least gives you a very conservative approach to where, I mean, let's be honest, I'm very conservative, but I'm willing to risk it for the biscuit and say rates are going to go down within the next 10 years,
Oh, yeah.
So, but like, that's
Sam,
how
you're so controversial.
I know I'm so crazy, right? I'm on the edge, but, yeah, I think that if you can work with someone that works actively, sometimes against their best interest, like sometimes, like some of the best agents I know will pretty much point out and say, you don't want that in that home. Let's try and find a home that doesn't have that, but it has this, like from taking it from a general perspective and talking about how, if you're looking at a home, because if you're talking to an agent that's always trying to patch it up, like, well, that will be fixed. No, this will be fine. This is that, this is that, this is that. Unless you have it backed by maybe the listing agent already confirmed with the seller that things are going to be taken care of a certain way, then yeah, you can take the liberty of saying that things are going to get taken care of. But some things you can't. Like if you're always trying to sell, the best salespeople I know don't sell at all. The people that make the most money act like they don't need the money.
Yeah.
The ones that act like they need the money are commission breath, and they're always trying to make it okay, or don't worry about that. Don't worry about this. Like if you're trying to force it on you, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Like the asset of a home, like, yeah, obviously buyers care about their monthly payment and their cost. And that's almost like an immediate satiation, but that's not long term. Like, yes, the monthly payment is what affects you on a monthly basis, but the asset of a home and it's like long-term investment strategy, like that's why all the first-time buyer programs, they want to focus on people, they're wealth builders. Mm-hmm. They want to focus on people who aren't there yet, especially the new Dreams for All thing where it's like first generation folks.
Yeah.
Because it's like getting into a home like makes the biggest swing. Like why I even got into real estate. I was in like healthcare for 12 years, just working operations.
Right.
I have no medical training. I'm all at like administration. And then when I got to this like crossroads of like, all right, new career change, what am I going to do? Real estate made me more money than anything else did. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, I have a knack for it. I do this stuff well. And so getting into lending and supporting people in that space, it's like, yeah, that thing is going to make you more money because it's this huge asset. It's like, how many house transactions does it take to build, say, 6 figures? Certain houses, you can do them in one.
Mm-hmm.
How many cups of coffee does it take to make 6 figures? Hella motherfucking cups of coffee.
Yeah, that's
man.
a lot of cups of coffee.
So it's like, dude, what you want to buy and sell what? Like, so like the monthly payment is also like, it's like sometimes I tell people, like, people are like, what's the rate? The rate's optional, bro.
Yeah, it's
How
true.
much what are you trying to do with it right now?
Well, I mean, I always say, the rate can be between this and this. Just depends on how much you want to pay. And like, what?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm never going to quote something that's going to cost you money. I'm going to quote you at what you qualify for. But your payment is dictated among many factors that we don't know until we have everything in hand.
Bingo.
Right. But I think that you make an interesting point. It's a long-term investment. I think a lot of people take the approach of looking at real estate from a stock market perspective. They look at it like, when people say I'm waiting for something to happen, you're focusing on timing the market. So that's very stock market forward, because, for instance, that reminds me of like trading in options. I'm betting that the price will be there, so I'm going to put my money in today because I think it's going to be here by this time frame. And if it hits that strike price and exceeds that that strike price on top of how much it cost me in that contract, I make lots of money. But real estate, we forget. It's not like, if your sole purpose is fixing and flipping, yeah, you're looking at it from a way different perspective from someone that's buying a home for themselves to live in for a long period of time.
Yeah, fix and flip, totally different
ballgame. But even then, though, what the markets don't change overnight in real estate, and that's one of the beauties of it. Stock markets can crash overnight.
Oh yeah,
stock markets can crash overnight. It's a manipulative game. Real estate is so much harder to manipulate that BlackRock owns so much property in the United States. Their ability to manipulate is still, they can't. They really can't. They don't own enough property. They would have to own like at least 20% of all the properties to make a significant change. And that's not the case. The majority of investment properties are actually owned by small mom and pops that own 3 to 9 properties.
Yeah.
Not BlackRock. So at the end of the day, what we need to be focusing on is what makes sense for you. That's why working with a mortgage loan originator and a real estate agent, that takes more of an advisor perspective, because it's not just a sale. It's how are you going to, this is a part of your foundation portfolio. The conversation I have is, how long are you going to plan to be in this property? Most of the time, first time home buyers, it's like 3 to 7 years.
Yeah.
But most people don't want to sell it. Most people want to convert it into a rental. But the more people that do that means that there's less homes being put on the market. So it's continually keeping a low supply. So if that supply never gets re-triggered and there's not a big supply shock, then there's no reason why prices shouldn't continue to go up. And it's tough because my two sides of my brain are like, man, I would love to see prices go down. It would offer me and a lot of other opportunities for a lot of other people to get into the market at a lower price point, because it's not all about the interest rate. It's the interest rate plus the current prices.
Yeah.
Right. So I had a really nice chat with someone at an open house. You know, we both do open houses, but her and her husband were kind of just, they're kind of they've dipped their toes into investing. They own one investment property so far. And she's like, yeah, like I'm just kind of just waiting to see what happens with, I gotta believe prices are going to go down. I asked her, I was like, I understand that, but let me ask you this. What makes you want to focus on that element? She's like, well, she couldn't really answer. I'm like, okay. The reason why I asked that was purely simply because, how long do you want to keep that property? Because you said that, I remember going back to our original conversation, you want this to be an investment property that maybe your kids buy down the road. That sounds like a pretty long-term investment. Wouldn't you agree? Mm-hmm. She said, I guess you're right. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not trying to push it to you, but all I'm trying to say is waiting for some event to happen is irrelevant to you unless your plan is to sell in this high price environment. And the idea is buy low, sell high. Buy low, sell high. It's very stock market forward. But if you take a 10-year average on real estate, you'll be very surprised as to what you'll see.
Yeah.
You'll maybe see this and it'll go like for instance, we'll see from like 1995 to 2007. It'll be kind of going like this. 2008, blink, then it goes up, and then it's been kind of slowly doing this. We far exceeded where 2007 was, and it's been a continuous flow. It just depends on what kind of financing, what happens on exterior situations, finances wise. There's a lot of situations, but the point is, time in the market's always going to be timing in the market.
Yeah. Treating it like like the stock market. I was having this conversation with the buyer. In the beginning, we're holding hands. We're getting real emotional with clients. You know, I have such a knack for being that sort of like therapist to my clients.
You were very good and natural at that.
I bill double. I bill therapy hours and mortgage hours. No, in the beginning, it's that connecting with the person, getting them to like building that rapport. But then when it's go time, then you're like, no. The conversation we had, you know, about what are your goals? Like, I'm not helping you. Like, I'm a mortgage expert. I'm helping you get a home. And like, there comes a time where the buyer has the fear, the anxiety, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And a good realtor, a good loan officer is like, no. Time is of the essence. Pull the trigger, execute, jump off the diving board. Those people who follow that, they jingle with keys in their hand. Our last handful, and even houses that are like fully renovated, like our last two borrowers, like beautiful homes, and they were all nerves the whole time. But at the end, we walk them through the process, and they're holding keys. How many people we bid out? Like I think I've told you the stories after the fact, and I won't go into super detail publicly, but
okay.
Hearing about like the houses that we got our clients with our realtors,
yep.
They then go, oh, we beat out so-and-so. We beat out so-and-so. Yeah, because like our clients were not looking at that immediate thing because it's like a long-term strategy. It's a long-term plan. Get that house and then the rest of it will fall into place. And then that growth that you experience is huge. Mm-hmm. I love using the term with my clients. That's like what you get in that home is send your kids to college money. Like the amount of equity, the amount of growth that you get. Timing the market, like we all go, when should we have bought? I always tell my clients 6 months ago, a year ago. And then in 6 months from now.
It reminds me of the thing that my finance teacher, it was probably my favorite teacher in college, but he said the best time to invest was yesterday.
Bingo.
It's so true.
Yeah. Because
it's not like, for like a great example I personally had was I was a dummy and I didn't, this is me in the stock market and the crypto market. So if you go back to the beginning of 2021, well, I started making money to invest in really the beginning of 2021 is when I started thinking about it. So if you remember, if you're not a big crypto guy, you probably don't remember, but that's when the last pump started and ended. We saw all-time highs with all cryptocurrencies, all coins and meme coins. And what I did was I didn't know what I was doing. So what I did was I just invested at first, and then everything tanked. So I say I was stupid, but I was also smart at the same time because I consoled with my dad and other people who have been investing for a while. He gave me a good perspective. Like, dude, you're 20. What was I? 23? You're 23 years old. How long are you going to be investing? Where do you think these prices are going to go? And like, it's time in the market. So guess what? I didn't sell anything. Now, Bitcoin is up. All my stocks are up. it's just because I had time in it. I would have lost it if I sold it. But the point is that regardless of what happens or anything can happen in the world. Anything could happen. A war could start that could create all sorts of economic ripples. But at the end of the day, I like real estate the most just because there's a finite amount of it. There's not going away. There's not more earth that's being built. There's more homes. There's only so much land to be built upon. And when I know there's a finite amount of it, that means that there is a set supply, which means that there's always going to be value to it.
Yeah.
The more that's absorbed, the more scarce that asset is, the more valuable it becomes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, like everybody, like I remember seeing like posts where a guy spent like 100 units of Bitcoin to buy like a pizza or something. Now those 100 units are worth millions or something like that.
100 times 70,000.
Yeah. And then it's like,
yeah, that would be
even now being like, oh, buying into it's expensive. Like even now buying into it's like, oh, it's expensive. All, but yeah, but like, okay, so buying into it, let's say at 70,000, like, and I'm not saying it, can you buy fractions?
Oh yeah.
So like,
oh yeah.
What are you going to think when it reaches 100,000 and you're like, crap, I should have bought it when it was 70. Mm-hmm. And then when it's 100, people go, no, it's like still too expensive to buy. Well, what happens when that thing goes to $150? And then now it's like, oh, I should have bought it when it was back at 100. And so it's like, that's the same thing with housing, man. When should you have bought it? It's a finite resource. It's a finite asset. They're not making more of it. It can only go to a certain extent. Like they're not going to be, building houses in like, Yellowstone National Park like that. Those areas are protected. And so like where we're allowed to build, like, yeah, eventually we run out.
That will be interesting when you're able to buy real estate. There've already been a couple instances where there has been, but there's no escrows that can handle Bitcoin transactions to buy real estate.
Oh, interesting.
Because right now you'd have to liquidate and then obviously use it in US dollars to then put it towards a down payment or buy a home or whatever, right? But yeah, with Bitcoin's interesting. It used to be so volatile, but now it's still volatile, but it's in terms of like relative percent volatility, it's not moving nearly as crazy as some of these other smaller coins. Like you can see 1,000% increases in one day with one, and then 1,000% decrease in one day with the others. But Bitcoin, if you see anything above 10%, that's crazy. But it's kind of starting to move like a stock.
Yeah.
Like a normal blue chip stock, but kind of going off basis. But yeah, I mean, I was happy to have you today, man. Are there any other things you wanted to talk about? Is there anything that's going in your mind? I forgot to ask you about your rucking event.
Oh yeah.
We'll end on this. We'll end on this part.
So I did this 15-hour endurance event where rucking is a term that comes from the military where you have to have all your gear on you at any given time. Mm-hmm. You could be out in the middle of nowhere and need your gear, and you have to have it all with you. And so they train their military to be able to carry that stuff for a certain amount of miles. And so in these sort of endurance athlete community spaces, they've kind of adopted that as a sport. So they basically put a 30-pound plate in a backpack, and they're usually like backpacks that are designated to that are kind of ergonomic and designed for this. Like the weight sits higher in the bag. It has like a special pocket for it. And there's usually some type of like plastic thing in the back of the backpack that helps it keep it upright because the weight will cause the backpack to get all sploshy. Mm-hmm. And so this particular event is called Grow Ruck. There's this big company called Go Ruck that does these. And this one is through the men's workout group that I do, F3. Shout out F3.
Shout out F3.
I don't know why I did this, but This didn't seem like it made
This
sense.
doesn't really insinuate the most.
No, it's a men's workout group. That's why.
Did it again.
Yeah, so I've been officially kicked out of F3. No, just kidding. They were like, no, you can't participate with those motions. So
F3, yeah, I'll tell him.
yeah, thank you. No, that's appropriate. So Grow Ruck is like through the F3 organization where it's more leadership development related. Even though it's like a brutally difficult event, like every guy can do it. Like there were guys who were in their 60s that did it, 50s, 40s, 30s, and in all from all kind of fitness backgrounds.
Walks alive, yeah.
Yeah, like some of the guys who completed it, I was like, holy smokes, man! Like
Just jacked.
these were like, think of like dad bods, like your average dad bod.
There's some crazy athletes that just don't look like athletes. One of
Bingo.
my kickboxing instructors, he kind of has he calls me CrossFit 1. CrossFit 1 is me, and then CrossFit 2 is Eli, my brother. But John, if you're watching this, I love you. But he kind of has a dad bod. But this dude, he is he is
He's a badass.
savage. Yeah. And he's got flexibility like no other. He's strong. He's very quick. He's going to get in you. He's going to get in you. It's probably the best way to frame you, but he's going to get inside to give you an uppercut faster than you can even think of. So, but like, it's weird how some people are like that. Some people's body types are just meant for different things
Yeah,
naturally.
and like these particular events, it's more mental than it is like yeah, you have to like physically train for it. Like you have to have some level, some relationship to fitness.
You have to have endurance training. Endurance training is so much different than like hypertrophy training, like just weightlifting or even what I'm doing, jujitsu and kickboxing and boxing. Like there's an endurance factor for sure. But
yeah,
I remember when I was during COVID, I was still in Boise at the time. I was getting out of college. I graduated that year, but what I was doing was I started running 5 miles a day every day.
mm-hmm.
But that training of doing that every day, it's like I can do more.
Yeah.
But right now I'm like 2 miles, I'd be gassed. You need to be consistent as hell with endurance training.
Yeah.
And that's just hard for me to do because I just don't lose so much muscle.
Yeah. People go, oh, you're probably a runner. I actually like don't love running. Like, yeah, I
With
like
those calves though, bro. Show the camera the calves.
no, my pants are too tight.
This guy has the biggest calves I've ever seen.
Thank you.
He goes to foot to knee with his calf insert. I've never seen anything like it.
It's I don't have legs. They're just all calves.
It's just
from
straight
the
calves.
hips to the.
His calves are competing with your thighs. You know this. I compared. You're wearing shorts in the office the other day.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro.
The other day, a dude rolled up to me. I was at the Sacramento bike party, and this guy rolls up. He goes, "Dude, leave some calves for the rest of us." I was like, "Oh shucks."
That's a big compliment for a guy to get. I don't get any compliment on my high inserted calves, but hey,
So
genetics, baby.
yeah, thanks, mom and dad.
Yep.
But yeah, dude.
Mother
So,
Russia.
so this endurance event, it just like tests you in all these different ways, and like F3 stands for fitness, fellowship, and faith, and it's not a Christian organization. It's faith the way like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts have faith. Like it's leadership development in the sense that like when you have a sense of a higher purpose or somebody that's above you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be less of a D-bag. You're going to be less self-involved. You're going to think beyond just the ego, or at least you're going to be inclined to think, in higher ways. And so during the event, they had a couple of times where guys had the opportunity to let like some stuff out. And as guys were just
So healthy for guys to do. We keep so much in.
oh, dude, as guys were like sharing their experience, and they were like my personal friends, and I know that I know them in my workout group, and then from in the Grow Ruck, there's guys from all these different regions, guys from San Diego, guys from Seattle, a couple of other spots, and like but the guys that I knew, hearing their stories, oh, dude, I just wept immediately, man.
Yeah.
Like when those guys started sharing what they went through, and like it's like equivalent. I was telling my buddies, it's like one of my buddies, it's like if you have like a church experience or a like powerful spiritual experience that like really fundamentally changes like the person who you are. There's a lot of healing in those events and things like that. The Grow Ruck had moments like that where like, I'm sure there's a Greek word for it that's escaping me, but it's like the spiritual equivalent of just something super powerful that it's hard to put into words, but it's a combination of all those things. And after like leading into it, I was telling guys in my group, I was like, I'm scared. Like, and I've done, we've me and a buddy of mine, we put on these mini events to like train and to lead up to it, but it's hard to train for 15 hours. So we were still clocking in like 2.5 hours in some of our trainings. And then we did some, half marathon rucking. That was like 3.5 hours. But still, like you come back from those and you're hurting, you got aches and pains, and you're like, dude, 15 hours of that.
Do you mind if I bring it back to when I just thought it was very cool that you guys are in a position where all the bullshit aside, you can actually express how what you've actually gone through, and you realize that you're not much different. Like, I think I can speak from experience. I know you can speak from experience, but when you're in a place to where you have no one to talk to, you kind of have to put on this facade of like, everything's always good. You're always telling people that, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Especially with the social media culture, you kind of get in this mindset of like, I'm just lame. I'm a loser. Like, it's just like, there's something I'm not doing that's not working. I just need to man up because everyone seems to be doing just fine. So what's wrong? What's wrong with me? But then you realize, and you talk to, I've spoken to people that are like in their 40s and they are very successful. And then we have a real conversation of just like, you felt like this and this still kind of comes up in your life. And like, I think that is so nice for other men to share. Just so you have understanding that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's very powerful, and that allows you to keep moving forward. And I think that's where, unfortunately, we see a lot of male suicides, because it gets to a certain point to where guys do not feel like they are in a place to where anyone would understand where they're coming from. They're just a burden. Nobody would listen. Nobody cares. What's the point?
Yeah.
But when someone opens up to you and just has the balls to just go out of their way and say that this is what I've done, I'm still working on it and I'm having a hell of a time. Then like one of my buddies, I won't say his name, but he's an agent I work with. We had a talk yesterday, and all the things that I've been feeling lately in the market, like how like on the verge of almost quitting and on the verge of just like kicking yourself, just being upset with yourself, looking around, wondering why me? He talked to me. He's like, going the same way, exactly to the T.
Yeah.
And then weirdly enough, guess what? I felt better after that because I knew that I wasn't alone.
Yeah. For a long time, I would hear people share that they would have an experience. Then when they found out other people were experiencing the same thing, how much like comfort, relief it brought them. Maybe I just wasn't in groups where I had those shared experiences, but I was like, okay, that's a human experience. That's a thing. When you realize that you're not alone in something, it brings you some type of comfort. And then like being in this group, like I always tell people like, my dad worked 12 plus hours as a semi truck driver for like 28 years. I have 4 sisters.
Which is crazy.
My brother...
4 sisters is crazy. So you're the only boy?
No, well, I have an older brother who's 6 years older than me.
So you have 7 siblings?
Oh, I'm one of 6, excuse me.
Okay, so you have 5... Okay, so you have 4 sisters and 1 brother.
And then
there's you.
Yeah. And then I'm the 5th, and I have 1 younger sister. And then most of my aunts and cousins, like a lot of females in my family.
Yeah.
Like my brother, him and I really didn't get along until like later in our years, and he was gone for like this long swath of
it's very normal
high school and stuff like that. And so I just was always around and then all my friends in high school were chicks, and like and then when I got married, I had 2 daughters and so just like relationships with buddies and friends, like just wasn't really a thing for me and so
Like you probably had like buddy acquaintances, but like not anything
superficially.
past surface level. Right.
Yeah.
And we still have those relationships still.
Yeah.
And those are the ones I'm trying to kind of cut out.
Yeah. Those those like there's an amount of those that are all inevitable where you're going to have like those acquaintances, type of things. But I remember just as I was getting more, growing my relationships and friendships in like this group, and just even then, and then it kind of bridged this ability to have like friendships in other areas, like, and then I remember like as I was interacting with those guys, going, oh, hearing their experiences and going, that's universal. That's just human. That's what I'm going through as well. And that was like one of the first times where that clicked for me. I was like, because I didn't really ever have those experiences where I would hear other people's experience and it'd bring me comfort. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not heartless. Like I would hear people's like experiences and I'd have compassion and empathy and like I'd feel for them. One of my favorite things is like growing up, like my church used to do baptisms where they would give like a 2-minute testimony of like where they were in life and where God.
That's kind of cool.
And like a lot of people in the church are like, oh, baptism night, ugh, again. I freaking loved it because it was like hearing people's like raw experiences.
It's almost like something that you were yearning for but didn't realize that you needed at the time, and that's probably why you were kind of craved it.
Well, what I loved watching people's experience and just loved people just being real, and then just like loved watching people like get success in their life. Just to hear like my church used to like have a lot of people coming out of like substances and alcoholism, and to hear a person go, no, man, I was like strung out on drugs, and then God made these big changes in my life, and now my life is moving in that area. Like I like in my mind and my heart, like I cheer for that. I like root for people in that. And so I've always loved hearing people's like experiences and their stories, but I never really had that sort of like, hey, that I resonate with that. But then like being in this kind of setting, like I remember thinking like, this was the first time where I can remember going, that guy's like bullshit that he's been going through is analogous and similar to my own bullshit.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it just kind of like relieved me. It was super cool. And so,
yeah, that feels like a weight almost being lifted. Yeah. I think it takes a level of maturity to understand and appreciate other people's success. Cause I think if you're competitive, like I'm not perfect. Like when I was younger, when I saw other people get success, I'm like, how were they able to figure it out? And I couldn't. That was my knee jerk because I'm competitive in nature. I'm like, I want to do that. Why can they figure it out? But why can't I? Why haven't I figured that out? But then it takes a bit of time and maturity to realize that you're on your own journey. They're just in a different part of their journey. I know this has been beaten down, but people get into certain levels for a reason, regardless if you're religious or not. But I do believe that God puts you on certain paths for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's your job to keep your eyes open and lead with grace as much as possible to not turn away opportunities, be open-minded, and also just understanding that you're on your own path and being content knowing that you're on your path and you're not competing and adjacent with someone. Like what they're experiencing is not a deterring of yours. There is their own separate entity. You're your own separate entity. Maybe they're in a position where they're having struggles here, but you're doing great there. So it just comes down, I think, because it took me a little while, I think it just comes down to maturity to be able to step out of yourself to then truly cheer someone on. I don't know if you've dealt with this with people, but you can tell that they're kind of giving you like half-ass props.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of like they give you like a good job, but it's almost kind of like
behind gritting teeth.
Yeah. Or what's interesting is like, I'll use this podcast, for example. When this was getting going, people would say like, how's your little podcast going? It's little things like that. how's your little podcast going? So, in other words, you're doing something that I don't have the balls to really do. A lot of people are doing it's you're putting yourself up in a position where you can fail. I'm not doing that, but I'm just gonna throw a little doubt at you through my messaging.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know everyone's dealt with that in some degree, but that just comes down to time and execution. Just focus on people around you that really matter to you, and people that aren't going to support you aren't going to support you anyways.
Yeah.
You know, I think that goes with business too.
I think like on the other side of the challenges, the adversity, the like people who doubt you, on the other side of that is success. Like when you push through that like period of time, what's on the other side of that? It's not failure, because failure is when you don't push through that. So it's like you push through that, and then what are your options? Half of success? No, that means it's a precursor to what your success is going to be. It's like the start of the success. But it's like when you push through that, what's waiting on that? It's not.
How does it go? People think you're crazy until you've made it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like people, I love this video of Mr. Beast. I'm sure you know who Mr. Beast is. Great.
Yeah.
I love who doesn't love Mr. Beast, but essentially he said that everyone will think you're crazy until you've made it. And when you've made it, they'll say you're lucky.
So good.
It's so freaking true, man.
Yeah.
It's so true, because at the end of the day, and don't get me wrong, wealth building in some degrees, there is an aspect of luck to it.
Totally.
But consistency and proof of consistency, the majority of people out there are making their money through hard work. There's some people that made it through crypto pump and dumps that just have no idea, but the ones that you can tell by just talking to someone if they've gone through the shit.
Yeah.
You know, there's some people that I've met and they're in our industry and they have the connections from maybe their dad or their mom. Maybe they own a big business that's very well known within the community and they have immediate clients. They talk differently.
Yeah.
The people that I know that are successful because they just grinded and it popped in 10 years into the business, like those are the people to talk to. But you can tell in their voice, you can tell how they talk, that it's like if they have stories to say, they've been through it. Like if they say I've been there, that they have.
Yeah. There's like a hardness to a person. Like in your example where the person who might have had that silver spoon type of experience, like they don't know adversity. Like their experience points are like way less. It's like when you get like, when life like knocks you on your ass, like, yeah, there are people who stay there. But then like when it like knocks you on your ass and you get back up and you keep going, that just like builds and builds and builds. But like when stuff is just handed to you.
There's one guy I think of in high school, and I'm not going to name his name. There's no point. But the one thing that was a bummer, and I knew this was going to happen, was I don't want to go too much on a rant. We're already an hour and a half into this, but essentially he was given everything at a young age and he was not incentivized to work. It got to a certain point to where he was demanding his parents to do X, Y, and Z. Take me to this party, take me this, blah, 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 blah. And it got to a point where I spoke with him when I got back from college. I was on the grind doing real estate and mortgage. And I just asked him what he's doing. He's like, not much. I'm like, how are you doing mentally? He's like, not great.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is that? He's like, I don't really have much purpose. I don't really have anything to work towards. And that goes to I told him, I just had an honest conversation. I was just like, you need to put yourself in uncomfort.
Yeah, dude.
Because the one thing that was interesting is I actually grew up, I would say, middle, higher end class. Like I didn't have to worry about where my food was coming from. I know you grew up in a very different position. Things are a lot more tight. there were times, I mean, my parents were in the real estate mortgage industry, so there was ups and downs for sure. But at the end of the day, I had a great childhood. I'm going to be the first one to say. But what's interesting is that I kind of give my 17-year-old self props because I knew that life was not supposed to be this way. So I needed to get out of my element and figure myself out. So I think the biggest issue is when they stay stagnant in a comfortable spot for too long, complacency. It's the longer you stay in it, the harder it is to get out. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Boise State. I'm going to go out of state and just put myself in a new element. And that alone, regardless of the education, which was good, but the most I got out of college was the fact that I learned how to be my own man and knew how to learn who I was. And then from there, I can make a firm decision on what I want to do and the trajectory I am. Not like I can make I want to get into mortgage because it's my decision. I had all these things that were pushed my way. Marketing. I was a marketing degree. There were internships, people doing this, people doing that, staying in Boise. But it got to a certain point where I knew myself. And now that mortgage was more of like, this is my mission. You know what I mean? So I got to a point to where I knew myself, but I need to get out of my uncomfort. But going back to him, I don't want to say his name, but you need to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, get out of your parents' house, get in a position where you need to make a monthly rent payment every single month.
Dude,
light a fire in your ass, light it. Now he's in sales, doing a lot better. Because if you're a man with no mission and purpose, what are you?
Oh man, dude, in F3 they call it the sad clown, man.
It's true, man.
That guy where he's like, yeah, I'm doing great.
Ladies, if you're watching this, have you met a guy to where you can just tell that they have nothing to benefit the conversation because they've gone through nothing?
I'm not a lady, but I know plenty of guys.
But you know it and you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's very surface level. It's more ha 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 ha. That's the way I describe the person. But it's because it's like it's like usually more sad.
In storytelling, there's the thing of the hero's journey, where like the hero, like one of the attributes is that they have to leave their home. Because like if you're in your own environment, like where you have comfort, where you have cushiness, there's no growth. And like in all the like ancient Greek stories, there's one psychologist, he goes, well, you look at even the Christian stories where you have like Abraham. Abraham was basically living on his parents' couch in the comfort of his father's, I don't know if it was a village or his father's like people group.
Okay, yeah.
And then God tells him like, no, you need to go leave. And as soon as he leaves, it's like one adverse event after another, after another, after another. And eventually he like grows into this like person who is now the father of like the Jewish nation, blah, 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 without getting like, but even like you look at like Hercules resided in his hometown. And then when he becomes of a certain age, I think he then like leaves and all of his adventure, all of his stuff starts to go. Mm-hmm. But if you don't leave, so like to your point, like you got to this where you're like, no, I like live a pretty good life. And, you know, but there's no growth there.
It's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. What adversity hits you, but you do not give up, makes you a stronger man mentally.
Yeah.
You know, and then like sharpen your tools, your tools the more. That's why some of the people that are some of the wealthiest people came from the shittiest beginnings.
Yeah.
They had to dig through it. And they're also so motivated to not be there. It's interesting to even think about putting yourself into a financially difficult position just to light a fire in your ass. That's more of a radical approach. And a lot of people are doing it. But a good example was I forced my mom to pay rent when I was living there. Like, so like I live in one of my, I live in my mom's investment properties, and she wanted to give me a reduction on rent. I was like, I raised my rent for her. I raised it $250 for her. So I'm paying $1,700 plus all the utilities. And because I was like, Mom, I can take it.
Yeah.
She's mama bear. She wants that. But from a male perspective, I know, well, for one, I want to pay her money. It's her property. I want to make sure it's cash flowing plenty.
Yeah.
And two, it's not going to help me at all giving me anything. Don't give me shit.
Dude,
I'm 26 years old. I don't need anything.
Beautiful.
It's on my shit.
Dude,
it's my shit.
Think about how better the world would be if like every youngster adopted that. And I'm not saying like every youngster's in a place where they can do that, but it's like, fine, you don't have to go to that extreme, but like go do fucking hard shit, man. It makes you better.
What did Huberman say? I think like Huberman, you know, Huberman, love him. There's literally a study saying that if you do stuff that you're literally like to your core, you do not like, there's a part of your brain. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to butcher it, but it gives you a longer life expectancy, because to me, the way I understood it was that the more resiliency that your brain can overcome, the stronger and the more longevity it has.
Dude,
it makes fucking sense.
And you build more pathways in your brain.
The tough part about it though is it can be hard, but the minute it becomes not difficult to you and you get used to it, like ice baths are a good example.
Oh, yeah,
you got to do something even harder than that.
Yeah, you gotta.
So if you're a glutton for punishment, you're gonna live long.
Yeah.
If you're a glutton for punishment, you're gonna live long. But yeah, you have any final remarks?
No, man. Let's go punish ourselves.
Yeah. Do it. I got to work out after this too. But thanks so much for coming. And it was a great episode, and I'm looking forward to the next one and also your future at Make Capital.
Likewise, man. This is super fun, man. Appreciate it.
Good stuff. See you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yep.
Boom.